rather than rather than World War III, which I think is preferable.
Right.
Matt, if you've looked at the statement from Iran last night, effectively trying to de-escalate this, suggesting that if there is no retaliation by the United States, that they won't retaliate. Having said that, they effectively said if there was any retaliation, they would, as you know, go after Israel. They talked specifically about Dubai. How did that, on the ground in Israel, what were people saying about that?
Well, all of that information is kind of shakily sourced. It's not entirely clear whether they would go after Haifa, which is the name of the city they mentioned in that report. Haifa, of course, is about an hour north from where I am. It's within range of Hezbollah weaponry. So that's what makes Haifa such an attractive target, and it has a lot of military installations, a lot of industry for Israel. That's one of the reasons why they might be targeting Haifa. It's entirely unclear whether it would even come to that, whether that would actually come up, because if, as I said earlier, if it's over, if this is the entire extent of the reprisal attacks from Iran, then Israel might be escaping any kind of reprisal. And I have to mention that up until last night, up until these missiles were launched, we were hearing from the Israeli cabinet and other Israeli officials that among the Israeli political class, they believe that Israel has nothing to do with this, even if the Iranians and Iranian proxies consider Israel to be a direct extension of the United States on the ground here in the Middle East. Most people in the security establishment here in the Jewish state don't believe that Israel is involved, and they seem to think that they might get out of this scot-free. Guys?
Okay. Matt, thank you for that report. We appreciate it. Meantime, I want to get the U.S. response. I want to get over to Eamon Javers in Washington. Eamon.
Yeah, Andrew, you've got to take a very close look at the messaging here that's coming from both sides. Still no word yet on when we'll hear from the president of the United States today. We expect the White House will give us that information when everybody gets to the office this morning. But as we take a look at this Iranian state TV video from last night, this was released by the Iranian side showing the missiles allegedly being launched. Remember that countries release military video when they want the world to see those images. So this is what the Iranian government wanted the world and perhaps the Iranian domestic political audience to see, is Iranian missiles being fired, striking back, slapping the United States. That's the messaging from the Iranian side, very public here. The messaging from the president last night after those missiles impacted was one of calm. Here's the tweet from the president. This came in the 9 p.m. hour last night, East Coast time. All is well. Missiles launched from Iran at 2 military bases located in Iraq. Assessment of casualties and damages taking place now. So far, so good. We have the most powerful and well-equipped military anywhere in the world by far. I will be making a statement tomorrow morning. So pair that all is well messaging with the messaging from the Iranian side and their statement suggesting that the Iranians took and concluded a proportionate response. And you do paint a picture here, as Matt was just saying, of two sides that are looking to create an impression that this is, at least for now, over with. The Iranians get at least what they may have wanted with the release of that video and the impression around the world that they did strike back. And the American president now saying, all is well. We'll wait, now that that tweet is about 8 hours old, we'll wait for new information this morning from the White House and the Pentagon, guys.
No, we have no idea whether we're talking to Iran through a third party. Do we, Eamon?
We don't. I mean, that's been a delicate issue in the past. There have been more communications in recent years, but than there had been traditionally between the two sides. But we don't know what the back channels are at this point, and what the diplomatic and intelligence communications be.
Who was the third party? I mean, what country was the?
I'm just conjecturing. I have no idea who could be involved.
Sometimes you can do that in Switzerland. You can do that through United Nations partners and others, but no indication as of right now that any conversations have been taking place.
It's everything we say. I'm very careful because I don't want to give the impression that this was not a commensurate retaliation to Iran, but I know that's what we're going to hear if there's no casualties. You're going to hear that Iran shouldn't be satisfied with this. That's what that's what you're going to hear.
But there's also a long view, right? There's a view that this is the immediate view,
right? It might be longer, but here's what I was getting to, Eamon, is that over the years, a lot of the language from Iran is very bellicose and
Sure.
over the top and hyperbole and, death to America, and we're going to do this, and it's going to be rubble. And we hear all that, but a lot of times we don't really take it seriously. They had an opportunity this time to really act on some of that really fiery rhetoric. And if this is really it,
In fact, some of the rhetoric from the supreme leader of Iran overnight was not nearly as bellicose as we've heard in the past. He did call this a slap in the face or a punch in the mouth, depending on the interpretation that you took from that, for America. But I didn't hear the death to America that you typically hear with some of these issues.
And you look at the president's level of bellicosity coming way down as well here in Washington, right? I mean, before the retaliation, the president was issuing warnings, threatening to strike 52 different sites in Iran, talking about hitting cultural sites. There was a controversy about that yesterday. After the attack, the president tweeting, all is well, looks good so far. Much more calm, measured kind of tone from the president of the United States after this. As I say, the important thing here is the messaging that both sides are sending to each other. The release of that videotape, the release of these tweets and comments, all of this is sending signals from one side to the other about what their intentions are and what their capabilities are. And we're left sort of sifting through all of that and trying to figure out where this is going to go next. As of now, though, I agree with you guys. The bellicosity level, it seems to be coming way down. But this is a delicate situation, and that could change.
If there's not a third party that is a back channel, acting as a back channel, then the tweets would be the only way that they're communicating with each other, too.
Right, and the question is, do they understand each other, right? I mean, both sides have, a lot of hyperbole and rhetoric, a lot of bellicosity in their commentary, but can they see through that and really understand what the real intentions are? That's always the question in international conflicts, and it's particularly confusing here because of the cultural and political gaps between these two countries.
Eamon, thank you very much. I am sure we will talk with you more later this morning. In the meantime, for reaction to heightened tensions between the United States and Iran and what it means for the markets, let's welcome DJ Peterson. He is founder of Longview Global Advisors. He advises corporations on global risk, so it's a good day to have you here, DJ. Also, for market reaction to this, Jim Urio of TJM Institutional Services. He's also a CNBC contributor. And Jim, let's just start with the market's reaction. Are you surprised to see that the S&P and the NASDAQ are actually indicated higher right now, and that the Dow has come back from that down 400 points that we saw overnight?
I've spent the last, 12 hours being surprised about a ton of things. I mean, we talk about strange news nights, and then we have last night. I think the 60-point bounce off the lows in the S&Ps is an aggressive rejection of those lows. From a technical standpoint, that's a pretty strong signal. But the fundamental story itself, I mean, we have to remember that Donald Trump has to thread a needle today when he gives his statement, because the market is absolutely interpreting this as, Iran doesn't want to escalate. They felt they had to do something to save face. They did it. And, they've used their coupon, and now hopefully all is well. Now, and it's funny that you mention it that way, because that tweet last night could be taken as all is well at our bases or all is well in this situation. And we're going to hear from Donald Trump today and find out more about that. I personally think it's probably going to be put aside now. The market's reaction to me makes me think that it will take out yesterday's highs, which are up at about 32.53, and I think the market's going to do okay.
Although, as Eamon just said, things could change very quickly. If it looked like things were escalating again, what do you think would happen with the stocks?
No doubt about it. I think if he gives his statement today and there's an indication in that we plan on escalating this, I think the markets could suffer too. Not because I think that war is necessarily terrible for markets. I think that we've had a 30% rally in the last year. There are still people who are assessing risk. It's the first trading week of the year. People are worried about having too many stocks. I think if he starts to speak that way and saber rattle, I think the markets could suffer. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he has a perfect out. We slap them, they slap us, everybody gets to save face.
DJ, you spend your career actually advising companies on what to think about global risk. I bet you've been pretty busy lately.
It's been quite a day and quite a week, yes, to start the year.
So what do you tell companies right now?
I think there's two parts. One is the near term and then the longer term. And the near term question is retaliation. The longer term is escalation. And what we're seeing right now, at least in the last day, of course, is that if you think about the retaliation, what the Iranians said is they started the retaliation with the attack on Al-Anbar, the first base, and they concluded it with their attack on Erbil, the second base. So perhaps that's it. That is retaliation. So the next question then is there escalation? Mm-hmm. And then escalation has the longer term play. And that
escalation between the two players or escalation with some of the proxy?
That's a great question, and that's exactly it. Escalation between the two players, a U.S. counterattack on Iranian assets in Iran. An escalation involving third parties might be an attack on Israel, or Israel taking a move against Iran, or attack against oil fields again in Saudi Arabia or the UAE. So it's escalating or expanding the field of play.
What do you tell companies that have business in the Middle East at this point?
Right. I think there's, again, two questions. One is, what are the attacks, or what are the potential reprisals that hit specific facilities or operations, brick and mortar?
Do you tell them to bring their employees back? Do you tell them to change their operations?
Not at this point. Of course, facilities and operations in Iraq are the most exposed. It's very clear that Iran wants the United States and American allied forces and American interests out of Iran. And so that is obviously the first.
Out of Iraq.
I'm sorry, out of Iraq. Thank you, Joe.
Actually, I think they've said the entire region at this point. They'd like
we're
to
not in Iran,
right?
I think, unless it's special forces.
Right. So I think if it's looking at individual facilities and obviously trying to guess what facilities or people are at risk. And then there's the larger systemic risks for companies. What does a disruption in oil supplies mean? What do cyber attacks mean from a systemic perspective, if that's really a risk? But clearly it's specific. The risks to companies are to specific facilities and people and operations.
Are you a believer in the conventional, what appears to be conventional wisdom in the last 6 hours, that this whole situation may have de-escalated and that Iran will really genuinely end what they're doing and that we will genuinely end what we're doing?
I don't think we'll end what we're doing. I think it's very clear that there's a longer-term play that Iran wants.
What does that play look like?
It looks like continued skirmishes in the region and perhaps around the world, attacks on terrorist-type attacks on U.S. interests, such as embassies around the world or people, facilities in the region for sure. That is going to continue. Cyber will continue. That is not going to go away, and perhaps will actually escalate. I think also a very important issue to watch right now is the destabilization of Iraq.
Right. And what happens if do you think we're going to end up having to leave Iraq?
Obviously, some interests. There's many parties. The Iranian-oriented political interests in Iraq want the U.S. out. The Sunnis and the Kurds do not. And I think at this point, for the U.S. to pull out would be seen, certainly globally, as a kind of, pulling out in response to this retaliation or this skirmish. So I think the U.S. would actually want to show that it's there staying in force in the near term.
Hey, Jim, very quickly, I know it seems minor in comparison, but we do have an ADP report that's out this morning. Will the market pay much attention to that, or is it just focused on this right now?
I think it's going to pay a little bit of attention to it. The market doesn't want to believe that things are boiling over and the Fed has to tighten in response to that. But things like this, what's happening in the Middle East, things that happen in China, I think ultimately there's this weird good part of it for the Fed, because the Fed can look at these numbers as they're heating up a little bit and say to themselves, yeah, but there's too many unknowns out there for us to start talking very hawkishly. So I don't think it matters as much as it does, obviously, because of the cloud of other stories.
All right, Jim, thank you, and DJ, thank you.
Thank you.
When we return, the other big breaking news story of the morning, the crash of a Ukrainian Boeing 737-800 in Iran. Take a look at shares of Boeing. They're down by about 2.1%, a decline of just over $7. Plus, another major event happening this morning, Carlos Ghosn speaking publicly, the first time since he was arrested in Japan in November of 2018. We'll tell you what to expect next, and we will bring you full coverage of the media event taking place there at 8 a.m. Eastern Time.
From dancing through the streets to the pulsing heartbeat in Brazil, to heading out on a safari in South Africa, or exploring the cultural delights of China. Wherever in the world you want to be, you can get there from your doorstep with KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. Book your dream deal at klm.com by January 21st and fly via Amsterdam from a choice of 16 UK airports. Make your dream a reality with KLM.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons, at TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
You don't just live in one room, so why should you Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's super-fast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre errors, Sky Kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
On the goal line, scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
A move, and a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
As tensions are rising in the Middle East, the next chapter in the Carlos Ghosn saga is unfolding today in Lebanon. Ghosn, who jumped bail in Japan, fled to Beirut, will speak publicly for the first time since his arrest in Japan in November, way back in 2018. His media event is scheduled for 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and ahead of the news conference, Ghosn's defense team lashed out at Nissan, saying the company's investigation into him was a gross perversion of the truth. For more on what's at stake for Carlos Ghosn, let's welcome Richard Karam, a Beirut-based TV talk show host and friend of Carlos Ghosn. Mr. Karam has interviewed the former Nissan executive in the past, and thank you for joining us. And you're on record, Mr. Karam, stating that Mr. Ghosn was treated unfairly in Japan. So with that as the backdrop, you'll be at the press conference. What do you think we're going to hear from Mr. Ghosn?
I first believe that Mr. Ghosn has a lot to say, and now it's going to be the time to talk. He needs to be heard, and we need to listen to him. Knowing Mr. Ghosn for the past 22 years, he has a lot of clarity, so I believe he is going to tackle the tarnished aspect of all those accusations and allegations that have been following him since last November of the year 2019.
Well, you're in a unique position, Ricardo, knowing him, personally and knowing his character. So you would vouch for his character in his business dealings, and therefore you would have to look at Nissan perhaps as a place that maybe didn't give him a fair shake. You're saying you doubt that Mr. Ghosn would have engaged in these illicit activities. Have I got that right?
I believe in the case of Mr. Ghosn, one needs to look first the basic rights any human being is entitled to have. The way Mr. Ghosn has been treated for the past 18 months, I repeat, is something nobody can eventually accept or tolerate. Guilty or not, we are all entitled to give our own version. We'll be all ears to listen to him, and he will be the only one who can reply to every single accusation, I repeat. This saga has been a very complex one. We've been all following it, and every day there is a new episode. And this gentleman hasn't spoken. He was supposed to give a press conference a few months ago, and this conference was forbidden at the end. And since then, it's a total blackout. So I believe in an hour, we'll be all ears to listen to him. And I believe what happened yesterday with the warrant against his wife, Mrs. Ghosn, is something that shows that many people want him to be silenced. Why? This is the big question.
Ricardo, do you believe that there is a way, maybe through the media and the efforts that he's going to undertake today and over the next several months, that he's going to be able to change the public opinion so much so that the Japanese will change their ultimate approach to him? And the reason I ask is because it seems to me that he is going to potentially either be stuck in Lebanon, potentially could go to France or a handful of places where there's no extradition, but that this is as much about a public hearing as anything else, and that the only way he's going to ultimately get his reputation back is if he could ever persuade those in Japan to drop the charges.
I think that Mr. Ghosn is not only going to defend himself. I believe he's going to attack. And this is another point quite important. Regarding the public opinion, it is divided, as everything in life. You have many people who are supportive to him, and you have, of course, a certain fraction of people who are against him. I have met a lot of Japanese journalists for the last 4 or 5 days, and I have spoken to them, and they came to me. And even in Japan, the public opinion is divided. And this is why, between a public opinion that already supports him and between attacking and proving to the whole world that those allegations are false, he will be capable of gaining again a certain of the lost public opinion, and he'll be able to clarify or to fix the tarnished image that has been following him and that was saying that there is embezzlement of money, there is he's a crook, etc. So he is the only one who can answer that and the only one who can clarify that.
Ricardo, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate it, and we'll be watching. I can't believe that we will be watching with interest. We need to multitask. I mean, we're watching a lot. We're watching a lot of things today, but that's going to be a pretty interesting press conference, anyway.
Okay, coming up when we return, breaking news overnight: a Ukraine Boeing 737-800 crashed in Iran. You're looking at shares of Boeing as we speak. They're down 2%. We've got the details next. And then later, our team coverage of Iran's retaliatory missile strike continuing. We're going to get an update from NBC reporters in the region. And we'll talk to Brian Sullivan on the big move in crude as well. Stay tuned right here on Squawk Box.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Which Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
This ain't just lunch. It's the KFC fill-up lunch for $1.99. It's mighty fine. Tingles your spine, so jump in line because it's time to dine on a mini fillet burger, 2 hot wings and fries, all for a fist-pumping $1.99. What the... The KFC fill-up lunch every day until 3 p.m. at participating restaurants every day from 2nd to 26th of January until 3 p.m. only, subject to availability.
From dancing through the streets to the pulsing heartbeat in Brazil, to heading out on a safari in South Africa, or exploring the cultural delights of China. Wherever in the world you want to be, you can get there from your doorstep with KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. Book your dream deal at klm.com by January 21st and fly via Amsterdam from a choice of 16 UK airports. Make your dream a reality with KLM.
This is a live message from the Survivalist Network. There are reports of an impending zombie apocalypse reaching London. But don't panic. Our intel shows that for £199 a month with 0% APR representative, you can locally access the Toyota Hilux Invincible, the only vehicle with the build strength to withstand savage hordes of the undead. Once inside your Toyota Hilux, stay on this frequency for updates. You'll be fine.
0% APR representative on new sales of Hilux Invincible over 42 months. £199 per month. Customer deposit of £10,246 when financed through Access Toyota by 31st March 2020. £12,525 optional final payment. Subject status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with